Well, hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Great. I'm doing great. I am about a year late to the trend, but today's the first time I'm using a virtual background.
Well, that's exciting. And where is your virtual background? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, this small bespoke bridge that
Interesting.
is not quite well known.
Well, it's another great day in paradise here. Let's get started. As I pull things up, what are we doing today, Rishi?
Well, today we have a bunch of questions from players in the Pioneer tournament that we will answer. We'll take a look at their landing pages, give them some feedback, and yeah, see how we can help them out.
Seems good. Let's go see what the leaderboard looks like. Oh, not surprising. Oh, interesting. Some action here in Africa. Some morning action in Africa. Do you ever think our leaderboard will get exciting as what happened in the stock market yesterday? One day.
If by that you mean will a bunch of users on Reddit collude to vote for the same player, then absolutely, I would expect it's already happening.
Oh, excellent. Well, that's great. That's really great. We can get started, I think.
Let's do it. First up, we have Lunar jobs with a hero image that I think you will enjoy.
Do you have the right spreadsheet? The first one I have here is not Lunar jobs.
Oh, sent you the wrong tab. One tab over.
Oh, I see. I see. My apologies. Okay, great. Awesome. So as Racy mentioned, we're just going to hop over to their website now and try to give them some good feedback on their landing page. Okay, this is exciting. This is a website. I see a astronaut getting lost in a stack of resumes. Use Lunar to stand out in your job search and start getting interviews. Okay, that's exciting. Some type of multi-apply app type of thing. Should we be doing some landing page feedback here or something more tailored?
Let's start with just understanding what they're doing. I think you'll find, I think there's going to be something in particular once you scroll a bit that I think will be interesting for us to chat about. So let's start with the landing page.
I mean, by the way, there's something kind of a small nit here, something interesting going on in the spacing. Seems like there's extra character spacing and also extra line spacing. Could look at the CSS, but I think that's maybe a waste of time. Yeah, definitely the characters are more far apart than they should be. Reserve your profile. I mean, that's an interesting action button. Nice, by the way. I very much appreciate the aesthetic you got going here with your Saturn launchers and whatnot. I don't know that reserve would be the action button that I would use. Probably something better that can be thought of there. Overall, I mean, I think, by the way, this just as a frame landing page kind of works. This is kind of attention seeking in a good way. You may want to consider, I mean, one thing I feel like we talk about here week over week is before you're known, it's probably worth having a fairly transactional landing page, and then over time, going aspirational, GDP of the internet, whatever that is for you. So if someone just lands on this page, you may just want to say, apply at once to, if that's indeed what you do, top 20 companies. You'll come up with better words, but you kind of get your idea. And it does seem like you do hear slightly different from a multi-apply thing. There's a kind of a loom situation going on. Okay, this is actually something different. You are helping people build about.me pages, seemingly. So that's cool. Then I would just change the texture to reflect that a little bit. So, you may want to say something like, unique, and professional, I don't know, and then you'd say something like, Lunar is the best way to stand out. Maybe your Lunar is the best way to stand out. Anyway, that's the TLDR. Because there are many different ways you could accomplish kind of the second point that you said, and obviously you're just doing the first. Anyway, so that's some quick landing page review.
They didn't.
I'll let you talk for a second. I would never do this. A scroll view within a scroll view. That just like locks the scroll position. Anyway, that's a small note. Go ahead.
So they didn't ask for specific product feedback. Their question is actually, how to survive until you can fundraise. But one thing that I do want to, actually, can you let me screen share for a moment? I logged in.
Yeah, totally. Am I in control of this one? Now you can screen share, I bet.
Excellent, yes. So they have interesting, this is basically how you put together your profile. You have a whole bunch of questions that you can ask, and then you immediately record on the spot. What do you think of this particular concept? It's something that we've actually interestingly thought about for Pioneer.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, the variant we've thought of for Pioneer is slightly better, I think, for the interviewer, and slightly more, how would you say, enthralling for the interviewee, where we surprise you with the questions as opposed to a pre-canned answer. And maybe that would be my thought here is, I guess if I'm an interviewer, certainly this is better than text in a resume, which is, prepared ahead of time. It's not, I imagine you're going to have some employers which are going to be kind of a bit more visual, kind of Loom consumers would want to watch a video. But you're going to have a lot of people that actually, I think, will prefer things they can consume through text. So, I think there's probably an interesting question of, who your target market is. I imagine a recruiter, I could imagine actually for like recruiters kind of using this to just get a better aesthetic for the person. But again, I just wonder if that's the right side of the market to sell to. I feel like what you should try and do is sell to companies, especially if you're trying to figure out how to survive pre-revenue. You're going to get that from companies, not from individuals looking to apply. Rishi, what do you think?
Yeah, it is an interesting question of how, like, I wonder, has the team talked to a bunch of companies and figured out this is something that would make their lives a lot easier? If not, I would suggest doing that. Like, yeah, their question, they said, but our business model relies on hiring companies joining, which won't happen until there are enough job seekers. I would make sure you've at least had those conversations, though.
Here's what I would do. I would change this. I mean, like, totally with 2 minutes of thought. I would change this and I would pitch it to companies. Meet. There's two different things. One obvious thing is you could pitch this as software to companies to better manage their ATS. That I think could just work if you could manage to properly pitch it. The other one is a bit more of a David to Goliath model. That would be something like Meet. Watch. You'd come up with better words than that, and what then but very much as a pitch for the hiring manager, for the recruiter. So that's what these people want. Is okay, I'm here. I mean, it's YouTube for performance. I'm interested. For company,
totally watch this.
Yeah, exactly. And now what you're going to do is, as the company, you are just going to manually beg, 50 people on GitHub to record a Loom video, like walking through their projects. And then you will download those Loom videos and re-upload them to your website, and then you're done. I think that would work very easily. I mean, you could be grossing revenue by, like, it's Tuesday now, by probably next Monday. So
Great. This is my fault. That now we can actually get to the actual question that they asked, but I think it's a quick one. How do you survive until you can fundraise?
Yeah, I mean, the reason ramen profitable kind of works is it's an interesting question. I mean, I think the reason software startups are profitable, or sorry, work at all, like the reason we have Google and the reason we have Airbnb and Stripe, Instacart, whatever, is you can get started extremely cheaply. Anyone from the world can get started extremely cheaply and not have revenue for a long time while surviving on ramen, hence the term ramen profitable. It's really important to note this doesn't exist in any other industry. It does not exist in physics, chemistry, biology. Like, you need high capital expenditure to get started there. Software is very special in this regard, where literally everyone has in their pocket the same exact computer almost that like the most highly paid person in the field has. Like literally the like Apple Silicon on your iPhone is probably on par with the Intel CPU that the best Google engineer has. So that's really special. You know, I'm not really helping you with the answer to your question, but you can kind of guess where I'm going, which is you just kind of need to reduce your burn and you know, and try to get to ramen profitability as quickly as possible. You often, of course, have situations where some people are in student debt or have rent to pay. They can't really just like cram into their parents', you know, basement and kickstart their career. You know, one thing that people do in that situation, if you're technical, is you can consult on the side. If you're going to go down this path, I highly advise you to bucket your consulting time. So that you still have time to work on your startup. It's very easy to get fooled into just consulting 24/7. And I think the way to think about this is vigorously segmenting by days if you can. But it's really hard because just like I find, at least the mind can only orient itself on so many things at once. So even if you know, decide you're going to do consulting 3 days a week and then 3 days a week work on your startup, it's just going to be hard. So you kind of have to be very strict about it. It's possible. It's been done before. But it's probably easier to do in this work from Zoom era, but still, that's what I would kind of recommend.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it's a bit of a silver bullet, lead bullet, not a silver, but you get the idea. All right, good stuff.
Cash Coach has an interesting question. Feel free to spend a quick second browsing, and then they have a question about CTA on their blog.
That's cool. Obviously, this website's been upgraded now. It feels like we're in the Matrix a little bit. That's kind of interesting. It feels like Fallout, right? Doesn't this look like that video game? I've never played it, but at least the aesthetic I see from the images, it feels like Fallout. It's an interesting question, the extent to which you would want this aesthetic for your company. I think their take is it's a game, so we want to feel like a game. That kind of makes sense. On the other hand, I mean, this is something we think a lot about for Pioneer. Like Strava is a game; it doesn't look like a game. So, you know, there's a good question for you there. That's my overall feedback on the landing page. You know, I'm not like a huge fan. For me, this is an uncanny valley of aesthetic. It's like not totally cyberpunk, nor is it totally like standard website. But I'm not like you know, a designer with that level of taste for me to give you feedback. But structurally, it seems good. I would try, I think you can get a better hero shot than this phone, than this screen. It's not clear to me that this is the most compelling part of your company is your monthly trophy. And you really get one opportunity, one shot, you know, to quote a famous white rapper. So you may want to find another page. I wonder which. I don't know. Find a more compelling hero shot. That would be my quick feedback there. Yeah, what was the question?
So they have been getting more search traffic to their blog. I think the blog link is if you scroll all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah.
And they've been getting more search traffic to their blog. And as they get more traffic, the less targeted, it gets less targeted. And if you can open up the first post. And at the bottom, they include these download links, and their conversion rate is falling over time as they get more traffic. And so Sam's wondering, should they change the CTA to newsletter sign up or something else at the risk of making the funnel longer?
It's a good question. So the way to think about it is, first of all, as volume grows, conversion will go down, I think, pretty much in every industry, unless you're doing something very special. Like the situations where that don't happen is usually where there's a K factor at play. So users are referring traffic to you, and so that's a very tailored traffic. And then sometimes you actually see conversion actually increase with volume, which is super rare. So you shouldn't worry about that. If it's truly falling off a cliff, I think the best way to visualize this is this. You've invited people into your home, and they kind of think they're here for a reason. They actually don't care about your secret underlying motivation, which is probably to get them to download the app. That's your problem, not theirs. And you kind of are only going to get them to do work for you if you solve more problems for them, I think. So, it doesn't surprise me if no one clicks on these links. I probably came to the site for very clear information on how to fix my credit score. Like what I probably want is a form where I put in my social security number and my credit score gets reset. But that's not your company. That would be a great company. So my advice is to just brainstorm like what problems you would want, for example, like if you go down this path, obviously one thing that comes to mind is there's probably other useful links that I probably want if I'm looking to fix my credit score. So you could provide those links. You don't even have to write those posts. You could provide those links. That could work. But I would just think of other ways to solve your user's problem, because it, by the way, may very well be, and this is often the case with SEO content, the conversion is going to happen decades later. It's by decade, I mean decades in startup years, which basically means weeks or months. You get the point, meaning someone's going to land on Cash Coach pages, 5 or 6 times over the course of 3 months, and then at some point, it'll be top of mind, so they'll convert. So that is extremely hard to attribute. And I think as a company, traditionally, I guess what happens there is you watch people just focus on overall growth numbers. So feedback.
I'm going to ask you another question they didn't ask, which is, well, should we just A/B test it?
Oh, great question. And what do you think the answer will be?
If it's not obvious enough, it's not worth A/B testing at this stage.
I think that is totally true. I mean, it's just not going to be fun. Let's just think about what's going to happen. First of all, you have to write the Rails thing for A/B test A and A/B test B. So maybe that's fun. And then you have to let it go for a while. And then you have to go look at the results. But by then you've kind of lost hope on the idea and you move on to something else. Anyway, it's just not going to be as fun as just pick one of the things and go on. But more seriously, I think A/B testing, feels pleasant actually, because you don't have to make a decision, but it's actually the worst decision you could probably make until you have really serious traffic and, you're really doing local maxima optimization.
There's a different path, which is just try it, but that's different from let's run both side by side and make sure it's a rigorous experiment.
I think that's right. I think you can kind of do A/B test caveman style, paleo style, where you just try it for 1 week and then try it for another week. So,
all right, next up, let's actually start with the demo video. The link is,
I got it.
You got it? Yeah. Start with the demo video and then go to landing page. It's just a little more fun that way.
Okay, don't look. There we go. Random demo video music.
Basically, you just take a couple pictures of yourself, get a 3D model, and you can start. I actually did not listen to audio the first time that I did this, so you can feel free to, yeah, there you go.
Okay, it's a virtual, oh wow, you get a virtual avatar for yourself that you can just place in random things. Yeah, you can place the asset. Cool. That reminds me of Bonsai Buddy, which I imagine no one here remembers.
That's pretty much it for the demo.
Okay, that's good. And he's at popcorn now, eating popcorn. Cool. All right, it's an avatar generator. That feels futuristic. And this is the landing page. Okay, turn yourself into a 3D. I mean, in hindsight, when you read that out loud, it is a great testament to the 21st century. Turn yourself into a 3D model. Apply various animations to the model and play with it in augmented reality. Okay, cool. So quick landing page feedback. Obviously play here should be capitalized, or you shouldn't have the ampersand here. It's a short landing page. It's hard for me to give you much feedback. I guess my question is, if I wouldn't have watched the video, because no one's gonna click, I mean, most people won't click here. One interesting idea for you, if you want to figure out how to communicate this, is you could do one of those super nifty autoplay giant videos of like basically what you have going here, because your idea is so visual that might work. It's not that hard. It's very HTML5 friendly. So it would just be some autoplay thingy in the background with like person, eating on a couch. That at least would engage people. I don't know if it would explain what you do, but it would at least engage them. So
the question for Pradeep is, it's obviously it's a neat product. Like it's something that I kind of want to just download real quick and play around with for a few minutes. But how should he think about monetizing something like this?
Or yeah, like how will people use this is a great question. That's interesting. Because this is totally a SISP, a solution in search of a problem. I mean, you could pretty easily envision this just becoming a huge feature in kind of next generation video editing technology. And so like I'm a YouTube star and I'm filming some videos and there's some fun avatars in the videos that aren't real. Like said differently, with image editing, which is just easier than video, we have filters. And so there's synthetic stuff in images, and that got really popular through Instagram. Maybe a similar thing happens with videos, not just in filters, which do exist, but in kind of adding objects in there. But that's going to require kind of real creativity and social network engineering that we're not going to figure out in 30 seconds. But I think you need to figure out, if you have the golden idea on how to like build this into a video editor product or turn this into a kind of a social network. And there are kind of interesting things you could do. Like maybe you could have your avatar do a TikTok dance that's really popular and promote that on TikTok. There's stuff there. So you either have to figure that out, or you need to figure out how to put this in the hands of people that do that. The latter approach often doesn't work for something that's so greenfield and new. So I do think you have to really get creative here. Ultimately, it would be awesome if you could either own the property yourself, TikTok clone with avatars, and like maybe you build. Look, we used to, like, puppeteering used to be a thing. We used to have marionettes and like little string puppets, and so maybe people do that with avatars now, and that's like a new thing. I don't know. But I think you'd have to be prolific about exploring a lot of these avenues fairly quickly and fairly rapidly and iterating around them. The other thing, which I imagine would be your dream, but I just think is going to be hard to do, is kind of be the Intel chip here and just sell this to people that, do the last mile assembly. I just think that's going to be tricky and hard. Because for those markets to work, there has to be, for non-consumption API platforms to work, there has to be either a really proven incumbent or a really easy path to revenue. Like if it would be akin to building Stripe before anyone really knew about the internet. And so you wouldn't have customers. Whereas you can really build Stripe or PayPal to that extent only after the internet's established. So you have this cool thing, it has dancing avatars. You're not going to be able to make like an API platform for it because it's not going to be clear to anyone why they should build on top of it. So you may have to prove that to the world. So my TLDR for you is you're going to have to build like a little game studio model where you try a lot of different approaches integrating this into, I don't know, in various creative ways and see where it goes. I don't know. What do you think, Rishi?
It's a great answer. I think he was probably hoping for, 3 easy steps, but it's just tricky. It's going to take a lot of effort.
That's a great piece of feedback though. Like if there were 3 easy steps, I guess it's tough. You have to kind of think, I mean, it's tough. We're not going to get there.
Yeah. Well, at least not 3 easy correct steps.
I would probably my 3 easy correct steps would be 1, generate a lot of funny videos with known celebrities. 2, try and seed them in like interesting communities and subreddits. And then 3, in the comments, just prolifically ask people what they think and what you think you should do. That alone, I think, could get you in a good loop. Okay, cool.
Great. We have to now average, FYI, about 5 minutes each for the rest of these. We'll go straight to the question for Isaac on Joon. How do you think about the balance of starting with a niche market, but also exploring how it can become a much larger venture scale business?
I love this website, by the way. It looks very playful. I'm just stuck staring at it. A niche market that could become, okay, and in this particular case, it seems like the question is, just to contextualize it, is it's some type of app that is, it's a sauna for kids. That's really funny. Okay, that makes sense. And so the question is like how to make this a sauna for kids as lucrative as a sauna one day. Obviously, you're going to broaden it out in a kid-focused way. Look, in general, I think going after niche stuff is totally correct. You basically have, I think if you're a founder starting a business, you have like, I don't know if it's a couple of hours, weeks, or months of like free energy inside you where you'll kind of just like go and work on the thing regardless of what. And then it all breaks and cascades down if you don't get positive feedback quickly in the form of revenue or feedback from people. And in a niche market, it's just easier to do that. Now, people say, well, niche market, your TAM's not that large. And I say at the end of the day, if you look at the largest TAMs on the planet, they're all non-consumptive. You never really know how big a TAM is. I think I was just seeing on Twitter, friend of Pioneer, Christina Casiopo, posted on Vanta, which is SOC 2 compliance. Everyone was like, that's not a real market. Turns out it is. Turns out markets are much larger than we realize. So I think focusing on a niche is totally acceptable.
Do you think when you're talking to investors, you need to articulate that somehow? Do you think they kind of know, or do you think you have to be very clear? Well, this is just where we're starting. We're gonna go to XYZ.
It's funny. Like I feel like with all conversations, something that's been stuck on my mind lately is that with all conversations, that are business related, there's really 2 ways to come at it. I am trying to entice you to do X. I know the weaknesses of doing X, and as a result, I'm going to try and kind of work around them, position them in the best way possible. And then the other party is I'm taking a meeting with you. I assume there's something wrong here, and I'm going to try and tease that out. I feel like that's how 95% of business conversations, happen. They're quite adversarial. The other strategy, which I find actually very American and Californian, one of the reasons why things work here, is to say, look, like, I don't know how big the market is. I'll be honest with you. I imagine you're thinking it's small. Here's why I think it could be big. I certainly want to make a big company, That to me is the much better way of going at it in all fundraising conversations, is just being kind of honest about it. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to deceive. This is maybe your first, second, maybe third time starting a company. It's the investors' 1,000th meeting this week. So you're not going to deceive them. So I would just call it out in the open. What do you think?
it reminds me of the common piece of feedback that we've given to a lot of pioneers when we're preparing for the live stream, for the demo live streams, which is there's too much jammed up front. Like move it, like leave it out for later, and just be prepared for the question if it comes up, and just be honest when it does, because sometimes when you try to preempt too much, it just doesn't have the effect. It doesn't have the result that you're hoping for. People can kind of see right through it.
I think
like
you're right.
I think the point that you just made, where you are saying where you want to express your candid thoughts, you can do that in sort of a discussion at the end, but it's hard to, it's not the thing to sort of say in your 2-minute upfront pitch. Maybe you disagree.
No, you're saying a great point, which is like it would be wrong to take that as to the advice I just mentioned and say, let me pitch you Joon. It's a niche market, so I think that's right. You kind of want some balance. I just, in general, I think, it's like always like how parents think the kids don't know, but the kids always know what's going on. That's how it's going on in conversations. The other party knows. So if you could just call it out, it's great. By the way, this seems kind of nifty and awesome. And one final thing I would say to anyone watching this, discouraged or encouraged, progress, and importantly, derivative of progress, is everything. So it really doesn't matter if you're moving quickly. If you are moving quickly, forget revenue. If you are moving quickly, anything is possible.
Great. Next up, we have nuBoxZ, I think is the way to pronounce this, but I'm not positive. nuBoxZ. nuBoxZ. Anyway, while you're taking that in, I'll give you the question.
Yeah.
So Jorge wants to fundraise at some point. They're trying to figure out, they're live at one location now. Is now the time? And they're live at one location. They have 20 buyers. Should they wait until they're at 10 locations? Or is now a good time to think about raising some money?
Okay, so for context, this is like an Amazon locker for Facebook Marketplace, and it allows you to buy and sell legal items without meeting face to face.
By the way, Jackson says about the company name, it could be Elon's kid's name.
Totally. Yes, it could be one of the Wingdings characters. If you ever use that font in Microsoft Word. Yeah, Rishi, what do you think this question? What is the real question behind this question?
I think the underlying question is, am I ready to, like, how does this look to you as an investor? I think it's, is now the right time?
Like, assuredly, if you told me as an investor, I'll send you an email after we have 10 locations and let you know how we're doing. I'd say, okay, that seems great.
Well, I think maybe the underlying, maybe the slightly different question is, what will be different in 10 locations that you don't know now?
And sometimes you see this in markets, in products that are in the physical world, as they expand, mostly globally. Just like the economics don't make sense at all. Of course, WeWork comes to mind. I think the SF region always was actually pretty good and stable and healthy for them. It was just the global expansion, different market dynamics. And so, maybe it is the case. I doubt that is the case with such local, you're going to have it's all in the same zip code, I imagine. So I doubt that'll be the case here. So I think you raise an interesting point. To what extent, will you learn that much more in different places? To me, as an investor, look, at the end of the day, if you can just deploy to another 10 locations, I would say, yes, go deploy to another 10 locations. Your worst case scenario is that you are burning, I imagine more money. I don't know your payback fundamentals, but you're burning slightly more money and you're exactly where you are. But you could at least say, you know, we learn much more. Your best case scenario is you have more revenue and you can just command a better valuation. I do think if we were to get hyper specific here to the specific thing you're building, it's like significantly stronger to say we have a network. We have a network of lockboxes as opposed to I operate one lockbox. That seems to work. So if you can get the capital, though, obviously you would want to raise it. There's something about this website which feels a bit off. It's like the culmination of a lot of things. I mean, I guess I'm sure if I would look, it would be a template. So that's probably it. And that's fine. I think this font could probably be much larger. This does not look like a button I want to click on. This whole patchwork over here, I think is a bit jarring. I would not invert colors like this constantly.
Are those actually clickable videos?
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, and also I think no one's going to click this. So you probably would want to just auto embed, auto play the video if you really wanted to, but then you'd have too much moving. I understand what's trying to happen here. You're trying to very procedurally walk me through what the product does. Traditionally, the way that's done is through 4 folds, 4 sections that I scroll through, which is just a bit easier to digest. And then I would remove this entire section here. I mean, I do think it's helpful, super helpful to have kind of an endorsement section, but like, no, the text here is too long. I don't know who Jonathan is. And this is a bit too enthusiastic because you have it over here. So anyway, it's quick feedback.
Next up, we have a repeat customer.
But you should do a web app or mobile, I saw was one of their questions, but whatever makes sense for your business. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
We saw Ethi a few weeks ago, but they have an interesting question that I think it's a good question to ask that I think it's interesting framing, which is, what's the biggest risk we still need to address that would stop us from becoming a big company? And I say it's interesting because I think sometimes the focus is just on like build, the next iteration, but it's an important existential question to think about.
What's the biggest risk they face? Is that the question?
Yeah. Like, what's stopping Ethi from becoming an enormous company? Or what might stop them from becoming an enormous company?
What do you think?
I'm still thinking about it. I don't have an immediate answer.
Well, I mean, what would stop this from becoming an enormous company is what stops most startups, or just people just don't care enough. Like, you start a company, it's usually because it's an irrational thing to do. So you've usually brainwashed yourself pretty deeply. So obviously you care. And then the issue is you brainwash yourself so much, you realize you're the only one that cares. So that's what kills most companies. I think that's probably your largest risk. Now, probably the more intellectually interesting one to think about, which I don't think is that useful to think about, but is intellectually interesting, is contingent that you get that's not the case, and contingent on maybe like the way you'd frame it is, what is the unique reason we would fail? Because there are common reasons why you fail. No one cares. Co-founders break up. What is the unique reason specific to this company why you'd fail? I don't know.
And by that, do you mean sort of a more specific, like, it still feels sort of under the umbrella of not enough people care, but it's, for example, it's too much effort to take it's just too much effort to take to get control over your own data, and it's not worth the effort.
Yeah. Right. That's another good idea, which is you could just sub-branch. Okay, what are the top few reasons people wouldn't care? Because that's unhelpfully vague. And so yeah, so one, people won't care because it's like too much effort to like give you all my accounts to get some knowledge of what social media sites care about me. And maybe 2, people care, but they don't care enough to pay. I think that's probably pretty likely. One thing you ought to realize that's a bit alarming is in consumer, direct to consumer, there are very few things people spend money on historically. So you have, broadly speaking, if you want to get very broad bucketed here, it's basically entertainment, food, housing, medical care, transportation. And then you get slightly more specific: internet, phone bill, iPhone, Spotify, so but they're fairly simple. In business, it's significantly more complex. So I just really wonder in consumer how you're going to get. I'd say one final thing. You'd say, well, how do you fit like Superhuman and Rome Research into this? And I say, well, by the way, those are unproven. But second of all, it's true that there is this line in between business and consumer. It's kind of prosumers, and maybe prosumers use this.
So say you're in Michael's shoes and you're trying to convince yourself, you're trying to hire, you're trying to convince people, you're trying to convince investors that this is not, that you're trying to de-risk this point that we're discussing right now. Is the thing that you try to do get more people to pay, or is there something else that is a meaningful signal that is maybe more, that is a slightly, I don't know, it might be just slightly easier than getting, thousands of people paying?
I wouldn't, well, yeah. I mean, this is the age-old question of, I'm not quite ready to pursue revenue, but how do I know I'm building something very useful? So obviously the first indicator of that is people come to your website and they've unlocked their accounts. I imagine that's like a pretty big commitment. And then you could go down all these different rabbit holes of figuring out how if you're building something really valuable or slightly less valuable. So an NPS study or the Superhuman regrettable study. And that's can probably work. It's obviously worked for Superhuman. The one issue you're going to have is nothing will be better than payment, for the simple reason that payment is just a way for you to prove that a person is willing to part with something scarce. And filling out an NPS study, there's no scarcity there. I can click on 1 or 10. It really doesn't cost me anything. That's why, I think there's something very worthwhile to go after for other reasons, which is just like usage. And some companies, should be tracking daily usage, some hourly, some monthly, whatever it is, but usage is the probably best thing for revenue.
The last thing that I'll say, and tell me if you agree, of course, is I think when you're this early, because you're just not going to have thousands of paying users, and it's going to take time to get there. Your best bet from a fundraising perspective, you're going to have to find someone who believes as you do that this is a really big problem that people are willing to pay for. That's why it's not just going to be a matter of like, why didn't I get this investor to change their mind? It's, you just have to find the right investor, the one who is actually going to care, or who already does care.
It is true that the availability cascade of a successful business has some aspects to it that are independent of time and person, like revenue scale. Like that will always be in a bear market, in a bull market, to an investor from one place or another, that will always be the thing. And then you sometimes have situations where you have contextual things, like investors super excited about, by the way, one final thought, just extending on your point there, you can try and create that like sense that there's something bigger at play here and you're part of a larger tidal wave. That's pretty hard as a founder. Maybe you can try to find an adjacent tidal wave to join with, and that way, at least maybe you can even end up in a situation where you're seen, like maybe actually the right thing for this company to do is like blog more just about how bad it is that, data and technology are, being housed by all these large companies and become a thought leader in the space. And that way you could potentially attract the correct investor to you. Okay.
3 left, speed rounds. Well, sort of semi-speed rounds.
We're doing pretty well.
We've seen Mirr, so we don't need to spend too much time on the landing page or product. They have an interesting specific question. How many pre-orders should they take before going into manufacturing? They've been told everything from 30 to 500.
Well, that's a good one. It's hard for me to know this without knowing a little bit more about the dynamics of the cost. And if, basically how aggressive is the curve, curve going down with more units. But I think probably their dream answer, what do you think their dream answer would be if I imagine probably 30.
Yeah. You want to get to manufacturing. That's just more data and it's more fun.
Yeah, honestly, I would just if you have 30, then just go. And I presume you're not asking me because 30 is impossible, just from, whatever supply chain you're working. So I would just do it sooner rather than later. It'll be fun. To Rishi's point, you'll get feedback. People will tweet about it. The word will get out. It'll get easier to make the next few hundred. That'd be my 2 cents. Sometimes you're in a situation where the cost curves are nonlinear. So, sometimes making 30 is literally 10 times the cost per unit of making, say, 3,000, or maybe even 300, depending on the thing. That's the situation where you'd want to be like, well, I want to get to a critical minimum. Otherwise, I would just go for it.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one for us to just answer well without more information, now that I'm thinking about it.
I think the pioneer. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the general philosophy behind the answer is probably useful enough to them.
Just have fun.
I was going to say more just err on the side of fewer, but also that. These folks, or Steven, would like landing page feedback. And in particular, the interesting one for here is, for Sedge, is feedback on their pricing strategy.
Plans. All right, we'll get to that in a second. Make music everywhere, share edits with everyone, and receive feedback in the easiest way possible. It's interesting. Look, overall landing page actually is pretty strong. It's kind of nice that this is animating. Obviously, the person looks like they're literally playing the drums on their desk, but that's fine. Nice to have icons here of AFC support, and not just because of the obvious reason, but it actually conveys what you do, I think, slightly better. You may want to consider, I would say, out of all these screen grabs, this is basically Google Docs annotation for DAWs. It's kind of cool. This one really sells what it kind of what it does, not where exactly. I don't know where this screen takes place. Is it in my DAW? Is it outside of the DAW? But it sells what you do a bit better. To the extent that you're struggling with conversion, I would experiment with putting something slightly more transactional up and making the text slightly more transactionable. If conversion is an issue, you could probably do something like, because it's, make music everywhere. I can kind of do that already. And so maybe it's a bit more like, get feedback on, what's the name? They don't call it clips, stems, I think. Something like that. I don't produce music properly, so I don't know, what the right name for it. is, but you get the idea. Okay, so pricing plans. Seems like it's free, and then you charge me $10. I mean, I'm going to give you some high-level feedback. It'd be tough for me to get more specific without trying it or understanding just a little bit more. First question would be, is this correct? Like, what is the cost here for you? It's okay to have cost for free users in a freemium model. You will have, at the end of the day, you are running the website for me right now, and I'm not paying you anything. But not prohibitive. So I just wonder what's going on here. The other question here is with this stuff is often is, how large is the median or the mode? Whatever, how large is the median holding? And so it very well may be that most people are like 5 kilobytes. And so it doesn't really matter, but I would just pay attention overall into your cost for your free customer account. Because sometimes you end up in a situation where this kind of wouldn't surprise me. If the product is very good, actually, people like tend to really juice you as much as they can. And then you just have a, bad lemonade stand. Basically seems like storage and some project management stuff is what you're going to upcharge for. I think all of this, I would potentially consider putting something like collaboration and chat in premium or probably free, just because it'll get you more usage. That is what you kind of traditionally see in other collaborative software. But other than that, looks good. Again, I do wonder, like unlimited cloud storage, I would recommend not really offering anything unlimited ever. If it's of any material cost. So I don't know how large your stems are and if this is material. But like you can put in 10 gigabytes or whatever the number is. Just unlimited is a bad number. That's kind of overall feedback. I think this is great. The main thing that I wonder for your business is whether you should just be building like Ableton in the browser. Someone is going to do this at some point, and then I worry that your business won't have value. I think this is basically the equivalent of you can share Illustrator files really easy, and then Figma's built. So food for thought. Would much rather be Figma than Sketch, I think. So an adjacent metaphor, but it's good stuff, Stephen. I think if you decide to build browser Ableton, you should email us. We would definitely be excited to work with you. An adjacent field of the machine learning Ableton that we won't get into now, that I think would be super awesome to work on one day. Rishi, what do you think? You're a better musician than me.
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, this is not exactly what he's doing, but I think the process of learning how to properly use a DAW is just so difficult. It takes so much education to take full advantage because no software actually teaches you how to do it well. Maybe part of that is just putting it in the browser, making it more accessible is going to, I don't know, if you solve that to me is huge. I'm a terrible producer for that reason, and I play a lot of guitar. I can't go through all the time and effort of learning how to use them properly.
It's so true. And it's a deep truth, like, I think, because to take you as an example, like you figured out how to use Photoshop, you figured out how to use Illustrator, like other creative software you have figured out, and yet, Logic, Ableton, not.
Like no software has made it an enjoyable experience to mess with EQ. It's just always difficult, and it always takes a lot of effort and time.
Something about it also being with the exception of Ableton's keyboard, if it's a very use your mouse cursor to physically move a dial, a virtual dial, which no one wants.
For this last one, take a quick look at the landing page, and then I'll tell you what their KPIs are, and they want feedback if those KPIs sound like the right things to focus on.
Okay, let's first figure out what this is. Curate your lifestyle with product lists. Okay, it's Pinterest. Keep track of the things you love and the ones you want to buy. Yeah, it's Pinterest. Okay, Cool. I mean, sorry, John is probably wants to shoot me now for calling it Pinterest, but it's kind of the right question. Sorry, broadly speaking, it's a broad bucket. Like, you are more Pinterest than you are SpaceX. Okay, do we have the right KPIs?
The KPIs are talk to new users. They've talked to 350. They're doing about 25 a week. And then increase weekly active users. Their goal is to reach 100 by January 31st. And they reached it. They're at 171 now. But weekly active users, I'm guessing it means users who used it in the week, just to be clear. Sometimes I think people confuse this with other related metrics. And by people, I also mean me.
The exciting thing for you is basically, I think that's kind of right. Like, I don't think you need to focus on revenue. I think you need to focus on usage. And then the question is, what is the right, like, is this weekly active, daily active, monthly active? And the thing I was Googling before that I think you can just riff off of is whatever Pinterest's metrics are. This will be exciting for you for two reasons. One is they've kind of figured out that that's the right thing to track, at least publicly. Two is it'll be super helpful for you when you're fundraising if you can show that you have, on a derivative basis, better metrics than Pinterest. That's the type of thing that will really excite investors. Now, I imagine there's 10,000 reasons you're going to tell me you're not like Pinterest, and that's totally fine. But you can take in me a specimen of an investor type who does pattern match you there, and I don't think I'll be alone. So that might be the right metric for you to track for that reason alone, if not anything else. But overall, that sounds good. Yeah, I imagine basically usage and look, the way you're going to define active user, everything will flow forward from that. So I don't know if it's something like added one product is considered active, open the website is considered active, that type of thing. But all of that sounds good. I mean, and I don't, again, it's quite possible that it's time for a better Pinterest. I don't mean that as a pejorative. Download now. Cool. Good stuff in the App Store.
Excellent. 1 p.m. on the dot.
1 p.m. on the dot. Well done, Rishi. What did you think of the session today?
Enjoyable. I think we need to get more product. We should start to get more poking around product instead of landing pages in there.
Oh, that could be interesting.
While doing that last one, I was just thinking, what else could we do? If anyone's watching, please post suggestions on how we can make this more interesting and enjoyable. I think the format, this existing one, will maybe consider changing to once a month, and maybe we do something else and alternate with a different format or something like that.
It's a great idea. I mean, this could be one of many. We could into product flows. I think we can do kind of roadmap reviews. That would be kind of fun. Basically,
deck reviews,
basically all the different activities you go through in a given day. And probably with the exception of like actual programming or designing, could definitely be doing those if people want.
You know, if we had Launcher, pioneer.app/launcher is live. If we, to your tweets point, do a bunch of more of those, we could just review the output of those various quests.
Yes.
Those various courses. Anywho, lots of ideas. We'll figure it out.
Great stuff, Rishi.